They said we had years left. Time to fix the sky. Time to mend the oceans. Time to argue at conferences while satellites confirmed the numbers. But the numbers were wrong. We had hours. I remember the moment the truth fell on us like glass. It was a Tuesday in late August. The kind of stagnant afternoon when the city smells of melting asphalt and car exhaust. I was covering the World Climate Summit in Geneva for an independent science outlet no one but policy wonks read. The headline all week had been the same. Solar minimum buys humanity 20-year buffer. The story said cosmic rays would thicken the upper atmosphere just enough to delay the worst cascade of warming feedback loops. Politicians celebrated a miracle reprieve. Stock markets soared on the news. We celebrated too, because people in crisis cling to any rumour of a slowdown. At 3:11 p.m, Dr. Celine Rowe, NASA's lead heliophysicist, walked onto the stage to present updated modelling. Her expression was raw, unpowdered, eyes sleepless. The room, lazy with optimism, barely stirred. She placed a single slide on the screen. A live feed of the solar and heliospheric observatory. The sun looked wrong. Its symmetrical corona had peeled open into a ragged wound, bright as magnesium. 5 minutes ago, she said, Soho recorded a superflares event, magnitude far exceeding our worst-case projections. We miscalculated filament destabilization by 3 orders of magnitude. She inhaled, her voice fracturing. The coronal mass ejection heading towards Earth has mass and velocity we believed impossible. It will arrive in 10 hours. If it maintains current density, our magnetosphere will be destroyed. The atmosphere will ignite. She clicked the remote. The next slide was a timer that read 10 hours. Someone laughed, thinking it was a prank. The laugh strangled itself into the hush. A delegate from Brazil choked out. But the Maunder minimum. Rose shook her head. The sun has entered an unstable phase we did not predict. The minimum was a feint. This flare is the correction. My phone went off. A push alert from the authorities confirming the coronal mass ejection. Social feeds detonated with the same headline translated into every language. Arrival in hours. The auditorium erupted. Some wept, others shouted, most froze. The timer on the projector ticked. I ran from the hall, struggling to breathe. Outside, protesters who demanded immediate action only an hour ago stood silent, holding signs that fluttered like wilted petals. I called my partner, Jules, in New York. The signal was busy. I texted, sun flare, 9 hours. Get home, underground. No response. Flights out of Geneva vanished from departure boards. People flooded the streets, their faces glazed with shock. I ducked into a baseline cafe to salvage my battery and sanity. The barista stared at the TV. Anchors failing composure as astrophysicists explained charge differentials, an atmospheric flash combustion. Words like global aurora and plasma barrage slithered across the ticker. Someone asked if bunkers would save us. The panel shook their heads. No shelter deep enough. No Faraday cage strong enough once the air itself turned to fire. I opened a group chat with my staff. Disperse. Find your loved ones. Publish nothing that feeds panic. 2 typing dots. Then none. Their cell networks had failed. 2 soldiers in NATO fatigues dashed down the street. Sirens began wailing. A dissonant chorus from every direction. The air tasted metallic, as if it was ionized already. My hotel room overlooked Lake Geneva. I packed without logic. Passport, laptop, a half bottle of duty-free whiskey. The hotel's PA crackled. All guests proceed to sub-level shelter. I knew that basement was a glorified wine cellar. Instead, I jogged to the rooftop helipad. Maybe UN dignitaries would extract. The elevator stalled, its doors shaking. I climbed 20 flights. When I burst onto the roof, the pad was empty, except for a single maintenance drone pinned by the wind. The sky above the Alps already shimmered with pale ribbons, a pre-glow of a geomagnetic storm. An hour had passed already. I joined a crowd on the Pont du Mont Blanc bridge. People pressed their phones to their ears, begging for connections. A mother stood on the railing, waving at the pastel sky for her vanished god. She fell. No one screamed. The Rhone's water glistened oddly, as though infused with neon dust. Ducks floated motionless, their necks slack. Public broadcast drones hovered overhead, projecting a single message. Return home. Stay with family. #Stay Together trended for one catastrophic minute before networks fried. I remembered my father in rural Surrey. Estranged since I chose journalism over farm work. I dialed the old landline, but static answered. I whispered an apology to the wind. News vans screeched across cobblestones towards the UN. Rumour said heads of state would record a final statement there. I followed on foot, my reporter instinct somehow outracing my terror. The courtyard looked like an anthill kicked open. Technicians assembling lights. Dignitaries arguing over flag placement. A priest offering blessings that no one accepted. Inside the marble hall, UN Secretary-General Lee stood at a podium, her eyes watering. Cameras blinked standby. Global feeds reset after each solar surge glitch. Her speech lasted just 30 seconds before the lights died. In that darkness, her microphone captured a whisper. "We had years." Her voice blurred out. 6 hours left. The first of the auroras swept overhead, a crimson curtain that draped the noon sun. The crowd gazed upward, hypnotized. A thunderclap rolled, though the air was still. Car alarms howled, then died. I checked my phone battery. 3%. No network signal. Jules? Nothing. NATO trucks distributed potassium iodide tablets for radiation, though we all knew it was like sticking a band-aid on a guillotine wound. I swallowed 2 anyway. I needed ground. Earth thick and cool, where I could breathe without seeing the sky tear open. The tram tunnels, packed with panicked bodies. The catacombs under St. Pierre Cathedral, locked. An idea sparked. The Large Hadron Collider lay under countryside outside Geneva. Its ring descended 175 meters below soil and granite. The superconducting magnets might shield, maybe. Worst case, the emptiness would offer silence. I sprinted to a commandeered scooter and bribed the owner with the whiskey. The roads were jammed, but the sidewalks were clear. I weaved through toppled scooters, crying pilgrims. My lungs burned icy. Past Pregney, the LHC site loomed. The security gates lay open. The guards were gone. I guided the scooter down a maintenance road to an auxiliary shaft. A sign warned of high radiation and restricted access. I used a rock to smash the keypad glass. The door clicked. Inside, a stairwell descending into chilled gloom. Emergency lights flickered, making shadows strobe. I clambered downward, my heart sinking to the timer in my head. Below, the hum of generators faltered, revived, and faltered again. The geomagnetic storm was already chewing the grid. At the 9th landing, I found the magnet hall, an endless tube shimmering cyan under emergency diodes. Its sterile odour reminded me of new snow. I wasn't alone. At least 20 others huddled along the corridor. Scientists, clerks, a janitor clutching a crucifix. When I entered, their heads lifted in silent query. I mouthed, "Here for shelter." They nodded, an unspoken pact of last hope. A man wearing a CERN badge, Dr. Roussel, approached and whispered, "The field strength of these magnets might bend the plasma's path, or cook us instantly." He laughed once, ragged. Hope was a strange luxury now. I sat against the steel wall, my digits numb. Someone produced a flask with some kind of alcohol inside. We passed it around. No one spoke of family. Too painful. Instead, Dr. Roussel dug a notepad from his pocket. "Write a sentence," he said, tearing pages. "If someone survives, maybe they'll read them." I wrote, "Tell Jules the sun loved us until it didn't." 3 hours left. The techno heartbeat of the collider slowed. Its power was failing. We shared glances, dripping with unsaid prayers. Overhead, a muffled boom shook dust loose. The Aurora's light seeped through cracks in the ventilation shafts, painting the hall in blood-teal flashes. A young researcher, Zoe, listened to a handheld radio. All we could hear was hiss. But then, a voice cut through, fragmented. "Global ignition models. Upper atmosphere at flashpoint. Northern hemisphere already aphotic." She slammed it off, tears running down her cheeks. Just 1 hour to go. The floor vibrated. Alarms brayed. The hum of electronics climbed to a shriek, and then died. An inhuman silence settled, so profound, I heard skin slide against cloth as people shifted. A brightness grew in the stairwell above. Sunlight, but warped, molten. It crawled down the walls like liquid. Metal groaned hot. I could taste copper in my throat. Dr. Roussel whispered, "Now!" We ducked behind magnet housings. I could feel the heat pressed through suits. Fluorescent tubes overhead exploded. The roar descended. It was wind made of fire. The hall's far end blossomed orange, as if a sunrise had tunneled underground. I braced for searing agony. Instead, a whisper floated inside my skull. "You were always light." The storm sucker punched the hall, flaying cables. Sparks flew, but a translucent ribbon unfolded from the magnet cores, an electrostatic cocoon. The plasma plume struck it, parted like tide around a rock, and howled into deeper tunnels. We huddled, bathed in a violet glow. Some wept. Above us, cataclysmic thunder echoed. The world was scorching. Then, darkness. The backup lights blinked. The air smelled of ozone and fear. We unclenched, bodies intact. One by one, we stood. We'd survived the first blast. The last minutes trickled by. Our devices remained dead. We didn't know if the surface still burned. Silence reigned until Zoe laughed nervously. It sounded obscene in that tomb-like hush. I could hear a faint dripping sound. Water? No. Metal pinging as it cooled. We ventured upwards. Stairwells steamed. When we cracked the surface door, dawn hugged the horizon, colourless. Geneva lay charred. Its rooftops were torn. The river boiled to mist. But the sky above was empty of aurora. The sun was flickering weakly behind smog. We were alive. At least, this pit of groundhogs. Dr. Roussel pointed north. Aurora's gone. Is it healing? My satellite phone, by some miracle, buzzed. A text surfaced unsent. Get home. Underground. It was my text to Jules. The signal existed again, but faint. I tried her number. It was ringing. Then a weak answer. Richard? Her voice, raspy but alive. She was in a Brooklyn subway tunnel. She'd survived. In mere seconds, I couldn't see through my tears. Days passed. The smoke cleared. Governments scrambled from bunkers. The casualties were unaccountable. The flare had scorched the stratosphere, but didn't strip it entirely. We learned the magnetosphere bent but held, thanks to freak reinforcement from the collider's magnetic pulse. Our shelter had ironically served as a planet-wide Faraday buffer. The last-minute field distortion spared Earth from total ignition. Scientists called it luck. Survivors called it grace. Dr. Rowe resurfaced on emergency broadcast, her eyes hollow, whispering that all of our solar models were forever broken. Months later, we gathered near Oslo. The world limped into a smoky new winter. I never stopped searching lists until one dawn, a muddied van rolled in and Jules stepped out. We held each other under an anemic sun. The years they promised had shrunk to hours, and yet some hours were mercy enough to carry us over the brink. Now, every sunrise feels borrowed, every bird call a rumour. But we record, rebuild, and watch the star that nearly killed us, praying its next breath is gentle, while knowing that's never guaranteed. Because when the universe clears its throat, promises of time dissolve, and what remains is the echo of hearts still beating, counting seconds, grateful to be counting at all.